These are the best products of 2024 according to you. I rarely start with eyes, but I'm doing a pretty glittery look today, so I think we should do eyes first. Actually, let me zoom in. Okay, we're very close up. These were all your answers when I asked over on my community tab, and the first one is an eyeshadow primer. This is from Milani. It's just called the eyeshadow primer. I really like this one. It doesn't tend to be my go-to eyeshadow primer personally, just because I like one that has a little bit more pigment to it. You can see this has a little bit of a tint to it, but it doesn't completely like cancel out the veins, which is what I tend to look for. But this one actually reminds me a lot of like the Urban Decay primer potion. So if you're into that, this is such a good drugstore option. I'm gonna be doing, of course, my full wrap up of like the best products of the year that are like my picks. So that is gonna come out in December like it normally does, but I like doing a full video of your picks. And what's interesting is that we have a mixture in here. Some of these I also love and totally agree with and are major favorites of mine, but some of them were not my favorites personally. But that's part of the reason I like doing these types of videos, because we all have such different preferences. Like what works well for me might not work for you and vice versa. So we're doing all of your favorites today. And for eyeshadow, I chose a high-end version and a drugstore one. So we're gonna do a bit of both on the eyes. These are all single shadows. So the first one is from Clinodh, and I'm gonna use this shade right here, which is Exothermic. This is my favorite shade out of all the Clinodh shadows. It's definitely a splurge, but it's stunning. Like, this is just so pretty if you're into hyper glittery looks. And do you see that already? I'm just gonna tap this a little bit in because I prefer more of a scattered effect. I don't want this to be too sparkly. I mean, it's mega sparkly, so it's gonna look sparkly for sure, but I just want it to be a little more scattered, so I tend to tap it in like that. It's such a good one and done shadow that like you could be done right here. But I'm gonna add another eyeshadow. This is another one of your favorites, the Finest Fleck shadows from e.l.f. So I have two shades in this. The first is the shade Champagne Showers. This is the one that is the closest to Space Cowboy from Urban Decay. But my favorite one is actually this shade White Hot. It's a very light shimmer, but I like this for kind of an inner corner scattered look. What I will say about these, if you apply them with your fingers, you don't get much of a scattered effect. It ends up looking a lot more metallic, but if you apply it with a fluffy brush and like tap off some of the brush, it will give that scattered look. But just know, the glitter particles in this are kind of on the smaller side, so I don't consider these to be good dupes for the Urban Decay Moon Dust shadows, but they're still beautiful sparkly shadows. So let's take my favorite one, Champagne Showers. Or no, that's not my favorite one. That's the other one. This is White Hot. And I like to take it on this tiny brush. This is from BK Beauty. It is the A504. This is a brush I normally use with this. You just need a small brush like this. It does not have to be this exact one, but if you wanted this exact one, BK Beauty did give me a 30% discount code through December. So it's just Kelly G, like through the end of the month. But anyways, I take this and I like to focus it on this region right here. And I feel like it really brightens everything up because it's such a light shadow. Like a lot of those shimmer particles are white, so it adds a lot of brightness to this inner portion. Okay, curled my lashes so we could do your pick for mascara. This is from Essence. This is their Lash Without Limits mascara, but specifically the brown shade. It is such a pretty shade of brown. This is a fantastic, affordable mascara option. It's definitely more of a natural but lengthened lash look, which is what I tend to prefer. See, look, they're like so fluttery and pretty. I love that mascara, but now let's do my face. Okay, actually there wasn't much fallout. I went to go like wipe it away. It wasn't too bad, but the foundation that you chose is one I'm really liking. It's still new to me, but the Huda Beauty Easy Blur. Yes, I picked this up in the Sephora sale. I only picked up two things, okay? I picked up this and I picked up the, oh gosh, now I can't think of the name. Refi Lip Blur. Okay, if you knew how long I sat here thinking like, what is it called? The Refi Lip Blur. I think I'm liking that, but mine did immediately break when I took it out of the package, which I've heard has been the experience for a lot of people. So I'll get back to you on thoughts on that. But this foundation right here, I think I'm really liking it. I had a feeling I would, and the two times I've worn it, I thought my skin looked beautiful. Okay, so I have the shade Shortbread 200B, which is a decent shade match for me, but I think it's a little bit yellow. See, I actually need to chill because every time I apply this, I forget, the two times, I forget how high coverage and high pigment it is, and then I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I didn't need that much. So we'll start with this. Do you see what I mean? It's pretty high coverage. A little bit definitely goes a long way. Do you see what I mean about it being a little bit yellow? It's like the depth of it is right for me, but maybe I needed to try a slightly different undertone. I don't know though. Once it's blended out, it does not look off at all really. Based on the other times I've worn this, the way I would describe it, okay, my first thoughts here. This is the Fenty Eavesdrop, but with higher coverage, okay? So if that is also like your favorite foundation, like it is for me, this is very similar to it in terms of the finish. I was expecting it to be even glowier based on the way I've heard it described, but I don't think this is like super glowy. Definitely not as dewy as like the new Patrick Ta foundation. You know, that one is hyper glowy. This one, depending on the way you manipulate it with primer, powder, I don't think it's that glowy. Okay, so I like to start off blending it out like that just because it is higher coverage and I like to like move it around the skin like that. And then I switch to a sponge. This is the Singe sponge from Angie's brand. And I've been really liking this sponge. Normally I'm pretty indifferent about makeup sponges, but I like the size and how soft this is. So I've been enjoying this one quite a bit. I will say with the Easy Blur, I think the first time that I wore it, I was a little bit underwhelmed just because the reviews I've heard have been so positive. People are like, it blurs your skin away, like your pores look filtered. And so maybe my expectations were a bit unrealistic about what a foundation could do. And I was like, I don't think it's that blurring. But again, it reminds me a lot of the Eavesdrop, but with higher coverage. Like I think it really just canceled out any of the freckles on my face. Though I will say in some of my drier spots, I can tell if I haven't like prepped it well enough, it does look kind of dry. So I'm wondering how it'll sit on my dry skin in the winter when I become even more dry in a little bit here. But so far, no regrets. I'm really liking this. So we'll do concealer in a minute, but I want to do blush first because I think it's gonna layer better doing the blush beneath this. So I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna use this today. I had a few of you answer the Milk Makeup Jelly blushes as your favorite of the year. And as you guys probably know, I really did not like these. I've had a pretty bad experience with them, but I thought I'd use it today for fun, you know. I think there is a way to make these work, which I've said before in my reviews, so I'm gonna show you how I would do that. First things first, do not swipe this onto your face. It will never blend out. I've also tried like using my finger and tapping it in. I still don't even think it's ideal like that, just because these set so quickly. So what I'm gonna do is take a really detailed, precise blush brush. So this is the BK112, but I specifically chose one this like tiny and precise because I don't want it too big. I want to really target where I'm applying it. So I'm gonna pick it up, and then I'm gonna tap on the back of my hand first just to do a little check, make sure I didn't get too much. And then just start working that into the skin, tapping it over. This definitely gives a better result and I can kind of build it at my own pace because these are highly pigmented. I also think some of the shades are easier to work with than others. The ones that lean more pinky red, I think are a bit more challenging than the more orangey ones, which I'm using right now. This is the shade Spritz, which is my favorite out of all of them, though again, I don't like this formula. But I will say I do always love a peach blush. I think it's just such a flattering tone, so this looks nice. I do notice it disrupting the foundation a little bit, which is another qualm I tend to have with these blushes. I just don't think that they're for me, and I've kind of accepted that, but sometimes I like these as a lip stain. I think that's a better use for them because you have just a little more control blending it on the lips versus trying to get it blended onto a cheek. Okay, a concealer that I heard a few times was the Tower 28 concealer. And this is not necessarily one of my favorites, but I don't think it's bad. What I will say about this, I like to let it sit for a while. Like, I'll apply it and then I don't blend this out right away. This is a technique you've probably heard of before, but it's basically the idea of letting the concealer start to dry down a little bit before you blend it out, and that can kind of manipulate the formulation a little bit, also bump up the coverage. And the reason I like it in particular with this one, this is a very hydrating concealer, so I find if I blend out immediately, it can crease, and it does crease pretty quickly for me, which is such a bummer because the initial blend looks fantastic, but once it's been sitting on my skin for a little bit, it creases. So when I let it dry down a little bit longer, I get a better finish and I get less creasing. And part of the reason I did the blush first, I like doing my cream blushes before I've done my concealer, because then I can clean up a little bit, especially if I take it maybe a little bit too high or a little bit too close in by the nose and I want to tone it down. Then the concealer will help you do that. Or even if you do the concealer afterwards and then you're thinking, okay, it took away a little bit of the blush, you can take the same brush that you used, it's still gonna have a little bit of product in there, and then tap over it and just reapply it a little bit. I'm loving the eyes though. Like I said, I don't normally do eyes first, but I like how glittery, sparkly they are. They look really pretty. And it was just the 2 shadows. We didn't do anything intricate. Like, you watched me just tap it on, but I think it looks like it is an intricate look, even though it was 2 steps. One of the most popular responses by far was one of my holy grail favorite products, and it is the Huda Beauty Easy Bake Powder. So I have mine in the shade Peach Pie. I kind of want to pick up another one of these, specifically the Cherry Blossom one. A lot of you were mentioning that one. I really love Peach Pie though. Sometimes I'll mix this in with a different powder that's a little bit closer to my skin tone, because this is designed for more like a medium tan skin tone to brighten the under eyes. And this definitely doesn't do any brightening for me, for my skin tone, but I don't mind that because I feel like it helps blend everything together, and I like the peachy tone because I think it looks natural. But I have a tip for you. So I have this in my powder puff, and make sure it is like really packed in there. You shouldn't really see the powder sitting on top of it. It should be inside of the puff. And then when you apply it, I don't recommend going like this and like stretching out the skin. I know it's tempting to be like, let me stretch the skin so any of the folds and creases are expanded. But then what happens is you get so much product in there that once your face sits back at like its resting position, it's gonna look crepey and heavy because there's so much product in there. So I recommend sitting, honestly, just like looking kind of normal. Maybe look down a little bit. You can smooth it out, but don't stretch it out. You know what I'm saying? So, and then just tap, and it looks so pretty. You can just keep on tapping. And what I like about the Huda Beauty powders, I am someone that loves powder. I don't mind if my look is slightly powdery. I don't want it to be cakey. I don't want it to be super heavy and makeup-y looking, but I don't mind if it has that like blurred out powder finish, you know? And with these powders, more is more. Like, you can do a little bit and it's still gonna set and look beautiful, but with this formula, you can bake, you can go in with a lot and it's not gonna look like a lot. Like, that tends to be a complaint for me for other loose powders on the market, where if you try to apply them the way that I like to use powder, they are not gonna work well with the other products beneath them. They're not gonna sit well on the skin. They're gonna be very heavy. With this, you can do just a light dusting and that's gorgeous, or you can go in and full-blown bake and then it's gonna still look perfect. I will say though, some updated thoughts on the Easy Blur. It's separating kind of bad on my nose right here. I didn't notice that the first 2 times that I wore this, but right now looking at it, it's definitely separating here. Another common answer was the NYX Buttermelt Bronzer. You know, this is one of my absolute favorites as well. This is the shade Buttercup. With this product, it is highly pigmented and it's very soft pressed into the pan. So a lot of it's gonna come up onto your brush when you tap into it. So what I like to do is take the cap and almost like swirl my brush around in there to get the product into the bristles a little bit. You could also do it on the back of your hand. Either way, you're kind of priming the brush so that you're not getting too much on the skin right at once. You're not gonna have like a splotchy spot that you need to blend out. This entire line has a somewhat rosy tint to it. You know, they're definitely not your standard bronzer shades. So I like that because you can kind of almost use it as a bronzer, which I know has been a buzzy word lately. Basically the idea of a product that's gonna be dual purpose, blush and bronzer, you know, give you a little bit of both. And this is a product I like taking when I travel, not as much anymore now that mine broke and it's very fragile, so be careful with that. But I like this because you can use this as your singular product and you're gonna get a bit of like a blush, bronzer, and highlighted look because it has a slight glow to it. Not in a way that should scare you. It's not like shimmery, but it has life to it. So I feel like it just livens up my cheeks. Tone is really beautiful and natural. I think these are just, oh, they're worth all the hype. They're fantastic and they're $10. Okay, more thoughts on the Huda Beauty Easy Blur as they're coming to me because again, this is a newer product to me. But the 2 times that I wore this previously, it was at nighttime. So I was getting ready with like artificial lighting. And when I film my YouTube videos, I film with just natural light. And I feel like seeing it now in natural light, it is looking a little bit heavy, not as heavy as most foundations that are this level of coverage would look, but I feel like I can see it on my skin more than I was realizing before when I was using artificial lights. I know we already have blush on, but I'm going to layer a powder blush on top because so many of you said this one from RMS. This is the shade Crystal Slipper. It is one of their Redimension blushes, and I have been obsessed with this year. So I like to take this on a big like angled brush like this, and a pretty big one because then I can just stamp it down. So I'm just gonna like tap it in like that. And this has a little bit of a glow to it, not too much again, but it just adds some life to the cheeks. And this shade is really pretty because it's kind of like this pinky beige. So it's pretty natural as well. Ugh, every time I wear this, whenever my makeup, whenever I'm finishing it, I'm like, something's a little bit off. I will grab this and just throw it on top kind of as a blush topper. It doesn't need to be a blush topper. It's beautiful on its own, just as the singular only blush that you wear. But I also love it as a topper when I feel like my makeup is looking incomplete or even too flat or too powdery. I'm like, okay, I need this. And then it just brings everything back to life. I didn't have too many responses for lip liner in particular, but I did see one for one of my all-time favorite formulas, the NYX Lip Liners. So this is the shade Ever. It is one of my favorite shades from the line. Honestly, you could stop right there. This is such a pretty shade when you blend it out like that. I mean, even if you don't blend it out, but oh, it's so pretty. But what we're gonna put on top of it was another one that I was seeing repeated many, many times. Can you guess? The E.l.f. lip oils. I really like these as well. These have grown on me. I was kind of more indifferent about them in the beginning, but I have found myself reaching for this so much lately. The shade that I have is Pink Quartz, which I feel like is one of the most popular shades in this line. And it kind of looks clear, but it has a little bit of a pink tint to it. And I feel like this formula is fantastic for just blurring the lip lines. I feel like it makes my lips look so much smoother than they are. I really love them. Okay, also these little hair clips, these were a collab with Kitsch and Hello Kitty. I don't know if they're still available. If they are, I will link them. Whenever I wear them, you guys always really seem to love them. Okay, but these were all of your favorites. I will be doing my Best of Beauty wrap up at the end of the year as always, but I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.